First, vicious values. Property owners at Leppington who face the compulsory acquisition of some of their land for the South West Rail extension have been ripped off by a compromised valuation system a parliamentary investigation has found. The Valuer-General, Philip Weston, has still to give a full explanation on this and other horror stories uncovered by an inquiry into valuations on which land tax and council rates are based. Yesterday, the committee unanimously recommended the Valuer-General's office be axed and replaced with a new valuation commission. In 2010, 4 semi-rural property owners in Leppington were served with 90-day compulsory acquisition notices over parts of their properties which fell across the planned route of the South West Rail extension. They were offered $85 per square metre under the fair compensation regulations. They contested this as way too low.
We had to get an independent valuer. It was around $300 a square metre.
That's $300 per square metre, according to them, compared to $85 per square metre offered by the then Land and Property Management Authority and affirmed by the Valuer-General. How could there be such a difference? Francesca and Frank Vumbacher knew their property was bang in the middle of the planned Leppington major town centre. It's going to be as big as Burwood, housing 350,000 people. The valuation should have been based on this fact, they protested.
It cost us over $150,000 in legal fees and specialists, which we had to get. And then we went to mediation. The mediation was a complete intimidation.
What do you mean intimidation?
Well, it was either they even offered us even less at the mediation in the Land Environment Court. And then we were under a lot of stress, you know, the people's health was being affected and we just took their offer. We couldn't take it anymore.
Faced with losing what equity and life savings they had through high-risk court actions, the distressed Leppington landowners all had to cave in and accept the low acquisition offers.
All the landowners just get ripped off.
Alerted to the Leppington case, Matt Kean, the new member for Hornsby, a qualified accountant and chairman of the Joint Standing Committee on the Office of the Valuer-General, used his committee powers to extract the Leppington valuation files from the Valuer-General, Philip Weston.
Here's our 2008 report.
On comparing a 2008 valuation on the Vumbacher land with an updated valuation in 2010, he found this, a cut and paste job.
If you just flip the page, you'll see that the amount assessed for these landowners in 2008, being $1.2 million, was exactly the same as the amount assessed in 2010, being $1.2 million. Every page appeared to be exactly the same. A major change in the zoning had happened, and the people down in Leppington, I think, should have every right to feel ripped off. The Valuer-General has subsequently come back and said he needs to do a more thorough investigation.
Significantly, the Leppington valuations were done by a government agency, LPI, Land and Property Information, but signed off by the statutorily independent Valuer-General.
We think the cost to litigate, to get a fair hearing by going to the Land Environment Court, is very onerous for many people.
The Valuer-General has sought more time to explain the Leppington case. He defends the valuation system overall as soundly based, will post his statement. He declined an interview. And there's another aggravation. Property acquired from Francesca and Frank Vumbacher and surplus to the government's requirements for South West Rail, extending to those trees you can see in the distance, will be sold by the government, its new owner, in due course, at what the locals expect will be a vastly increased price for land acquired unfairly.
It was just a land grab.
There are other instances of this in the area. Camden property owner Kula Rafalidis currently faces the compulsory acquisition of part of her property for road widening on Camden Valley Way. She's been offered $42 per square metre, which she's worked out was 30% less than she'd paid for it 8 years ago.
Well, that's the shock. You're just absolutely in shock. And yet you turn up to the negotiations and it's, well, here's the offer, take it or take it to court.
As a consequence of the Leppington cases, the Parliamentary Committee has recommended a new dispute resolution method for compulsory acquisition. And there's another horror story.
We valued it at around about $2 or $3 million, but the Valuer General put we were forced to pay $26 million. It's been an absolute horrendous burden on the people of Hornsby.
Talk about a black hole. The disused Hornsby quarry, about a kilometre from Hornsby railway station, had to be acquired by Hornsby Council on a disputed valuation of $26 million, to the shock of ratepayers who've been paying a 5.3% levy on their rates since 2005. The council was forced to borrow $20 million, some capital works had to be set aside, and $6 million of valuable assets were sold.
So that's the site there.
New Mayor Steve Russell is now nervously watching the potentially more costly step as the council takes the Valuer General and the former owner of the quarry, CSR, to court.
The fact is that it was valued on 400 units being built here. We haven't had one developer. If it was so valuable, why haven't the developers been knocking our door down to try and develop it? We haven't had anybody in the last decade come and talk to us about it because it just is not feasible. The cliffs here are unstable. The reason we're wearing the hard hats is that we're worried about rocks falling down on us. So we've got substantial remediation costs, as I say, at least $15 million to remediate the place so that it's safe, let alone be able to do anything with it. The costs of filling it are exorbitant. We'd lose money. We'd lose millions and millions of dollars worth of ratepayers' money trying to fill it in any way, shape or form. So we're just stuck with a black hole.
The case is currently in mediation. Unable to comment on specifics because of the litigation, the Mayor has this observation about the dispute settling process when entities try to approach the Valuer General to contest his office's valuations.
We were able to put in a few reports, but then CSR were able to put in 20 reports. We weren't able to assess those. We had no right of appeal against what CSR had put in. We had no right to go back and rebut it. It was outsourced. The evaluation was outsourced, and it was just not a very transparent process whatsoever.
The Valuer General hasn't given us an explanation with regard to the Hornsby Council issue. My report recommends a comprehensive overhaul to the Office of the Valuer General and the way valuations are done in this state.
The Parliamentary Committee has recommended the Office of Valuer General be replaced with a new Valuation Commission, 3-year averaging of residential property valuations to smooth volatility and build certainty, plus new dispute settlement with compulsory conferences before a new Chief Valuation Commissioner and more cost-effective appeal to the Civil and Administrative Tribunal. Land valuation has been called a dark art. The Valuer General's statutory valuations are the basis for setting land tax and council rates. The Parliamentary Committee has conducted a slide rule analysis of the system.
What we found is that a third of residents in New South Wales will experience volatility or fluctuations of greater than 30% in their prior year land value. That is a huge impact on businesses, on landowners. This report has identified systemic failures in the Office of the Valuer General and the valuations which are delivered by the Valuer General.
But significantly, Mr Kean's committee does not recommend the long-standing practice of outsourcing valuations to private valuation firms be ended.
No, we absolutely don't recommend that it should be an in-source service of government. We recommend that it should be an independent body from government, much like the judiciary, much like the ICAC. The independent Valuer General must be preserved. It must be preserved and protected. If the Valuer General chooses to outsource services, then he does so independent of government. But what we're seeing now is that those services are being outsourced by government for government, and that must be stopped.